I think I have to actually press go live on YouTube. Let's try. Okay, I think we're actually live this time after the second countdown. Welcome everybody to K6 Office Hours. I'm Nicole van der Hoeven.
And I'm Nicole. I'm Nicole. Yeah. My name is Simme, and we're joined by a very special guest today. Welcome, Gary.
Hey, you took my thunder. I was going to introduce myself as Nicole as well. Hi everyone.
Everybody
I'm
wants
Gary
to be me.
Yeah, who doesn't? Yeah, I'm Gary from New Relic. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Okay, looks like we are able to be heard at least and seen, so that's a start. Gary, do you want to talk about what you do in New Relic and why you're on the K6 channel?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nicole. So I'm a solution architect at New Relic, and I work in our customer success engineering team. And so I travel to our customers, or when we were allowed to. So now I sit on Zooms with our customers and the occasional Google Meet and things. But yeah, so I help our customers get the most out of our platform and observability. And this is how I came into working with all of you at K6. We had a mutual customer that wanted to get the telemetry data into New Relic and see the benefits there. And yeah, it seems like the relationship blossomed ever since, and New Relic and K6 are best friends.
Oh, we're besties now, are we? I don't know that I'm ready to call it right now, but we're getting there.
We're Twitter official, not Facebook.
Yes. I mean, that like when you exchange Slack invites, that's like serious stuff.
It's a new level.
It's a commitment right there. You have to go to your operations department or the service desk and have them, accept the permissions and all of that.
That's it.
Sure. That's what we do.
I assume that Gary has to do that at least.
I did. I have to go to Nerd Help. We
awesome.
call everything Nerd something at New Relic for our help desk. It's Nerd Help. I love that.
So actually, let's talk about Nerd Byte, which just came out. I think it was a few days ago. And that's you basically doing our job for us and demonstrating K6, which, I totally approve of. More of that, please.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Nerd Byte is our latest Nerd X or Nerd something. So yeah, the Nerd Byte clip went live this week. This was the integration, walking through it in like 3 or 4 minutes. How to pump the telemetry into New Relic and the value that you get when you're running the output to New Relic. And yeah, that followed on from the Nerd Log the week before, which was our Twitch stream. Yeah.
So why do you like? Sorry, Simme, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It was nothing important.
I was just gonna ask why you picked K6 to do that with. What do you find about K6 that's different?
Yeah, sure. So I had a colleague come to me and said, hey, it would be great if you can create a Nerd Byte on K6. Because the purpose of these like bite-sized clips that we have is we sometimes get a lot of the same questions coming our way, and a lot of the times, like a docs article is not enough. People want to see it in force. They want to hear somebody, going through it with them, and what you click, where you click, how things should look, which sometimes documentation is at least a bit more of a boring format sometimes. So we thought K6 was a really good fit. There is a community out there on your community and in the New Relic community that's asking to see the same thing. So we thought to add that because K6 is something that New Relic users, at least in my team's conversations that we've been having, has been coming up more and more now. So it used to be using JMeter and things like, hey, how can we get some output out of here? And with K6, it was super easy because the output was already there. You work in the open on GitHub, which I know that other projects are open, but they don't have like the supporting platform with the community, the live streams, and the documentation on GitHub. So it's very easy to kind of like all barriers were removed for me to get up and running and help everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said for test as code as well, because that just makes it a lot easier to integrate with whatever you want to use. And I think that for load testing, having somewhere to go to as a single source of truth for a lot of metrics, your load testing metrics, but also metrics on the server side, is actually really important, because otherwise you're running a load test and you kind of don't know what you're supposed to do with the results, or what the results even are, or how your application's responding, right?
May I suggest that we backtrack a bit? Maybe you've already touched on it, Gary, but I know that New Relic is the industry leader in their quadrant in every Gartner report since like forever. But for those who might be new to New Relic and tuning into this stream, would you mind giving us a pitch about what New Relic is and why it helps your customers?
I would love to. Thanks for the op there. I hope our marketing are not watching. I'll try and not mess this up. New Relic is a platform for observability and telemetry data. And really, what does that mean? New Relic really, taking it not to a technical level, it's a software that monitors all of your apps, your infrastructure, and it helps you deliver more perfect software. So we do that by installing an agent, typically, not always, you don't have to. But typically how this is done, and there are other APM vendors out there doing a similar thing. And how we work is you install the agent with your application. You install it on your infrastructure, on your browser website, or you run an integration like you do with K6, and you have that telemetry data going into New Relic. And what New Relic does, it does all of the smart things about connecting the dots and saying the why things have happened in this way. So normally people are much more familiar with monitoring, which is you're going in and you're adding instrumentation to notice the errors, but then we're reaching a level of observability when we're having these agents and this telemetry all connected together in one place with the context. And yeah, you're having New Relic join the dots, you're having it process that information, telling you why things have behaved in a certain way and how to improve on them. And yeah, that's what our tagline is: creating a better internet and more perfect software.
Are you reading for your marketing docs right now?
Oh, they wish. I think they really wish I were. No, that's the best I can remember.
Actually, I did want to talk about that because it feels like it wasn't so long ago that it was all about application performance monitoring. And I've noticed that there's a shift in the industry, and with New Relic in particular, in language. So now it's more about being an observability platform. Can you talk a bit more about why that is?
Yeah, sure. So monitoring, it's a very important thing to have. Like, of course, we need to monitor things. Like, you go to a hospital and you hook yourselves up, right, to machines and all sorts of things. But at that point, there's normally already been a problem, because you're adding this instrumentation after the fact, and you're using it to kind of define errors that you know about. So you're looking at finding the known knowns. But with observability, because you're having telemetry now come from a much wider array of places. Like 10 years ago, you wouldn't be having the Docker containers. AWS was it around then, or if it were, it was in a very infant state, and I think it was just EC2 at some point. But now you're having these like SaaS tools, right? So like you're having databases living as a SaaS. You're not having to install these things on prem and all of this. And really, this is what our messaging is with observability. We're having it as a platform all in one place, and we're connecting things. So we do some smart work on the processing of like an ID. So if you have your logs coming into New Relic, you can drill down from a trace, which is like a web request that someone has made. And the log messages that were logged on the host, it's all tied together. And New Relic's doing the smart part where it's bringing all of this into one place.
I wonder if we did get actually a New Relic question. I don't know if you want to answer that now.
Oh yeah, I didn't
It's
realize
extremely
that the questions-
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I may have sent some New Relic users in our direction by sharing this on socials. So okay, so
No, that's great. We said
Sure, yeah.
K6 or New Relic questions, so yeah, go for
Yeah,
it.
super. All right, so JSig says, I was trying to use dashboard create snapshot URL, but it's giving me link to a blank PDF. Can you try this? I think there is a bug. I hope there's not a bug. Dashboard create snapshot URL. This is something that we implemented, I want to say last week, but it's in the last few weeks. And this is supposed to return a PDF of the dashboard. So you can use it in reporting when you call the NerdGraph API. Jay, I have not used that API call, but I will give it a try very soon, and I'll give you a link where you can go to get some help on that. And we've got a Slack channel, which I'll put into the chat, and if I can find it, and I'll
Awesome.
send you a
Don't
DM.
feel obligated to like resolve everything that comes up either.
I mean, it's a very specific question. I mean, if you weren't live, you'd be able to look at it. But since we're actually on a video call right now, it's kind of hard to actually troubleshoot something in detail.
Yeah. And I'm also actually copying the comments in there, but it's okay. So we have another one from Stan Doubt, who says New Relic supports aptX, but it's not built into K6. What are your thoughts on its usefulness?
Okay, so K6 is so when you're integrating K6 with New Relic, K6 is the client view. So when we're talking about integrating the K6 metrics with New Relic, you're talking about integrating the client view metrics with the view that New Relic holds. And New Relic agent is installed on the APM service, and this is the server-side view. So there is still a huge value in having the aptX, and the aptX score, for everybody who might not be familiar with that, there is something called the aptX Alliance, which is an industry standard for how a transaction performed, and it buckets requests into tolerated, satisfied, which is like the best case, and then tolerating or tolerated, I don't know, and then frustrated. And frustrated is like there has been an error, or there is a breach of the threshold and it's very slow. And then you've got tolerating, which is that middle ground, which is things are okay, could be better. And then you've got the satisfied zone of the aptX. And so the score is out of 1, and then you're doing it in decimal points. So there is definitely still a value of that. And I don't know if I can share my screen on here, or if this is something we've planned.
Yeah, go for it.
So, okay, there is a lot of pressure on me with this. But let's,
no pressure. You don't
it's
have
all
to.
new
You
to
don't
all of
want
us,
to.
this streaming platform. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I've got open system preferences.
So while you're
Joyce,
doing that,
right.
I do want to say a few things. I think that aptX has its use, especially if you've been using another tool to monitor that before. There is some value in comparing to see what changed, or some, just it's easy to be able to see trends if you're measuring the same metrics. But I think the problem is when you get too caught up in that, it is very based on industry scores. And I'm personally a little bit more skeptical about industry scores because I think it really should depend on the application or the company or the specific project, because it's really difficult to say everybody in banking has to have a response time of 3 seconds and underneath that you're not satisfied. Well, it depends. Do you expect a 3-minute response on a mortgage application? Because I think we understand that more complex things take more time, right? So that's
But
my
I guess
take on it.
I guess it makes a lot of sense to use if you're implementing against a standard or some kind of
Yeah,
regulated implementation, right? So if you, for instance, are to implement, say, open banking APIs that are supposed to follow a open banking standard, then maybe
right.
there are requirements in that standard that you need to fulfill, and then maybe the aptX could make
Yeah,
sense, right? But for instance, comparing a car dealer with 100 unique views per day to a car dealer that has 10 million users per day,
yeah,
that wouldn't really make sense. They don't have the same requirements in terms of aptX either.
yeah. And I think Gary, are you ready
Yeah, are
to
you
share?
seeing my screen now?
We should be now.
Okay,
Yep.
super. Okay, brilliant. So this is a load test that I ran earlier today, and I am using the New Relic helper script with K6, with my K6 test. So I've got this to the last 3 hours, because I ran my test a while ago now. And there is definitely a value in it. So K6 is not reporting the aptX itself because New Relic is doing the reporting of that for you. But you can dashboard them side by side and you can analyze them side by side. And this is my node workshop view here. And we can see here that I started the load test at 2:24 and I had it run for about half an hour. So I'm going to zoom into the time frame of this. We can see that it ended, I don't know if you can see that in the top right of my screen, at 3:54. So maybe actually I'll just zoom to this whole period. And what we can see happens is we have this deployment marker, and I don't know if you're noticing across all of the widgets, the crosshair is updating as well. So I'm seeing that there was an incident at this time. And on my Node Workshop app, I actually have an alert for aptX that's happening in the load test here. And my Node Workshop app, it's designed on purpose to consume a lot of CPU and resources. And then my AWS Elastic Beanstalk app will scale up and hopefully rectify the situation. So what we're seeing here is a huge increase in the response time. We can see if we scroll down here that I add more instances into my pool for the app. So you can see more of them coming online. We only had this 227 host to begin with. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing this drop in the aptX, and I'm seeing that some of my, if we expand this actually, I'm seeing that some of this is almost entering the frustrated zone, which is this red zone here. So I'm very much in the tolerating while my load test is ramping up. And then what I'm seeing is a complete recovery in the traffic, and we're in the tolerating zone. So that's probably quite a long answer to just say yes. But yes, definitely, it's a hugely important it's a hugely important metric to be consuming, especially when you have a load testing, because you can come in here. We can see definitely that there is an impact on the end user experience. So with K6 being the client in this case, when we release our application to lots of traffic on the internet, this would be replaced with real users. And whilst we wouldn't always know what to monitor in terms of a transaction, an aptX can be a catch-all we can say, okay, well, actually, I want to know this across all of my transactions. I want them all to be in a satisfied zone, and I want to know about it as a starting point of where I can drill down into. So I can then use this to drill down into web transactions and find out the specific calls which are being slow and contributing to my aptX.
Wow,
Okay.
that's awesome. I didn't know we could do that actually. So that's a great way of being able. That's a great way to be able to use aptX with K6. Also, I also want to highlight that there are thresholds as well and checks that can be used in K6 that just get piped into New Relic as well. So I think you can. I think you would just use them all. I'll post that link for you, Gary.
Cheers. Yeah, there are lots of signals, and it's about finding the signals that work well for you. When we have like a new account joining us at New Relic and they're going through trainings and things with their teams, we're always recommending that aptX is a very good starting point. Yeah, and what Nicole has just shared in the chat is a Medium article I put together, which went through the example I just shown you, and I believe I talk about aptX in there as well.
And while we don't really have anything out of the box to measure or set up checks for aptX in K6, you could definitely use the formula, right, to just define your own threshold in K6 that corresponds to the same kind of formula and will fail in case you ever pass that threshold. So it's definitely doable, but using something like K6 Cloud or New Relic to complement in that case definitely makes things a lot easier in terms of being able to observe this data and take action on it.
Indeed, if you're using the helper script with K6, when you're in the client, the K6 client, when you're running the test, you would get you'd see in your terminal if there is an ongoing alert. So right now, if I was to run this script, the helper script, along with my K6 script, I would see that there's an ongoing alert. So you can still have this context. All right, so a lot more questions coming in. So Stan says, can you set an aptX threshold per request? You can if you set a key transaction, we call it in New Relic. So if you, in the top nav bar in New Relic, I believe you have to click on more, and then in the drop down from more, there is key transactions. Then you can set up a key transaction if you haven't already, and you can set the aptX threshold there.
And then, is it possible to use New Relic in K6 for trend analysis in CI?
In CI, what is CI?
Continuous improvement.
Oh, continuous improvement. Okay.
In integration, so it is actually possible to, or rather, we can split this question into two parts. First, is it possible to do trend analysis in New Relic? And the second part being, can we have the CI like initiate this this done? And for the second part, whether we can have the CI like initiate the actual test, that's totally possible, and that's one of the key features that we really worked a lot on making as streamlined and easy to use as possible. So setting up a CI workflow that kicks off a K6 test is definitely possible. And for the other part of the question, I'll think you're more suitable to answer that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so in New Relic, you absolutely can do that as well. You can have the trend happening. I'll resist the temptation to share my screen again. But if you're using the help,
want to.
Are you sure? Okay, I'll be quick this time then. Okay, so let's do it once more. Okay, so very quickly, I'll go into my APM app and I'll go into Node Workshop, which is where I used a helper script. And which reminds me, I should probably drop a link to that as well in the chat. But we have this deployment in the right hand side here. So I have given this a name, which is the K6 office hours. And if we click into there, so this actually is a very kind of shorter trend, if you like. So I'm having this report automatically generated for me. And inside of here, I'm having, this is a much shorter trend. So it's not like month on month or anything. But what you can do is you can come in here and you can take these metrics and you can use them elsewhere. You can put them onto the dashboard. You can just come to query your data, which will bring up the query builder. And then you can just point and click inside of here. So if I want to take my aptX and maybe I want to filter it on a dimension, which is my app name for Node Workshop, and then we can come in here and I can go to set custom. And actually, I've not even had the app running for that long, so bad example. But we can come in here and we can pick an end date of maybe today. And this is easier to do actually in the NRQL, which is our query language. I find you can just type like since 300 days ago, for instance, and this will come up. But yeah, you can get this long-term view. This is a metric, and this is stored for 13 months in New Relic. So there's lots of ways of going about it in here. I also posted a link in the chat. I don't know if Nicole has forwarded it to the YouTube. Yeah, okay, brilliant.
Yes,
so we announced the New Relic Explorer and New Relic Lookout last week. And what this is doing, this is analyzing all of your metrics that are coming into the New Relic telemetry data platform. And it's looking at what's changed, what's the deviation of these metrics. Previously, and in other platforms, you have had to go and specify a baseline. How New Relic Lookout and New Relic Explorer is bringing this data to you. It's the number of deviations. So it's looking at these signals and it's looking at all of your signals, and you can tell it, like you can point and click. You don't need to set anything up in advance. It's already been learning since you've had metrics coming in. But when you have a load test running, you're going to have your APM application in New Relic, and it's already been there, the charts. And when you go into, say, Lookout, when we launch it in the next few weeks, because we've only pre-announced it at this point, you'll be able to go in there, you'll be able to pick your app, and you can look at the signals. And what is a good idea, and what I recommended to somebody else using a different load testing product earlier today, was to open up Lookout and to look at what signals deviated when they had the load testing running, because this will surface other problems that maybe you weren't thinking were a problem downstream for when you've got this increased throughput coming into your systems.
Okay, so I'm just hearing about Lookout now. So if I understand it correctly, it seems kind of similar to a feature that we have called Performance Insights, where while you're running a test, there are algorithms that kind of try to detect known patterns and problems. But Lookout seems like it's on a broader scale. So it's not just a load test, but it's also taking advantage of the other telemetry data that you have. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. So New Relic Lookout can work on any of the telemetry data coming into your platform, but it sounds like it's a perfect complementary view. I never knew that K6 had that.
Yeah, so if there are a few things that it's going to pick up on, like for instance, if you're hitting the throughput limit to your load tests. So if perhaps you're trying to get to 8,000 users or something like that, and you're seeing that the load just can't be generated past that point, it has a bunch of suggestions for why that's happening and what you could do to get past that. So it's not about K6 per se, but more about just general performance testing, best practices. And it sounds like Lookout would be really good because it also does that for other downstream systems.
Yeah, if you were seeing that in K6, you were seeing this notification about what's an example? Would it say the server can only handle so many connections or things like this?
So it could also be something to do with the script. So it could be that so one of the suggestions would be to increase your sleep time, for instance, because we get some customers who don't have any sleep, and what that does is it just hammers an application. And really, what you're stress testing is the load generator, not the application, because
Mhm.
you start to see performance bottlenecks before the requests are even sent. So just little suggestions like that about how to set up your tests, perhaps.
That's great. I would love to try that out, because I think what a perfect flow would be is when you have that recommendation coming in from K6, is that you would open New Relic lookout and you'll look in there. What can you improve on the server side? Is there something that you can improve there to either allow capacity or make services respond more quickly to do requests?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm sharing my screen.
Oh, okay. I was like, what happened?
And I just wanted to quickly show you what Nicole is talking about. So I have a Azure pipeline pre-configured here that's running tests continuously. And if we enter one of them, we'll get all the metrics from that test. This is a pretty short test with not that many virtual users, but we also have the performance insights down here, where we can see that they found some, or the algorithms found some issues with my test. For instance, that the test duration is too short to do any real performance alert analysis. So if I expand that, then I'll be able to get more information about why that happened and what how long the test needs to be able to produce meaningful output. And these are all things that, if you're not used to doing performance testing, or maybe that's not really your main forte, you might miss out on those things. You might run a test for 10 seconds, making 100 requests and thinking, okay, so this is good, it looks good. While someone who is more experienced or has done this for a while might know that, okay, but with that sample data or that sample duration, you won't be able to tell anything because you're not trending for long enough. And you'll also be able to read more about our performance insights by just clicking the automated algorithms in the app as well. So it will warn you about a couple of common best practices or things that are worth noting or worth inspecting in case you're hitting any issues. So I totally agree with the thought that it might be great to combine these two, to be able to really drill deep into the performance part of your test or your application performance with using K6 Cloud, for instance, and then further following the upstream systems by using New Relic.
Yeah,
That's all I wanted to share.
it sounds like it would be also a good way to see right away where the problem is, if it's on the server side or is it on the load generator side. I think they could be quite complementary, actually.
Yeah, because that's one common issue that we are really not concerning ourselves with that much in K6, which is why I think New Relic is such an excellent complement to K6. When we do a performance test, usually I think most performance testing or load testing products actually behave about the same. We do some kind of almost black box testing in a sense. We have an endpoint, and we generate a certain amount of load or traffic against that endpoint or a set of endpoints in a user journey, but we don't really know what's going on behind that endpoint. So we don't know what happens in the upstream systems. We don't know if it's, for instance, the database that is choking on all the requests, or if it's a message queue that is totally, brought to its knees by all the requests coming in. So being able to follow that all the way and get an end-to-end visualization of what is going on behind your server is really game-changing in a sense.
So we actually got
Yeah.
another. Sorry, did you want to say something on that, Gary?
No, I was going to say what I think you're about to say.
Yeah, we got another message, another
Yeah.
question. Is there any API to get new Relic dashboard permalink? As of now, I'm using Selenium to get that link, but that's a lengthy way.
Yeah, I bet. So I'm going to paste into the chat through my proxy, Nicole, on the
Sure.
YouTube chat, I imagine. Nerd graph. You can, so in New Relic Nerd graph, which I'm just opening in the background here, you have the ability to run a query, and I'm just trying to find the exact call. But probably I would go into the entity search, and you'll use the query builder within there. And you can get a link back to the entity as seen by New Relic. I was just trying to build an example in the background, but I was logged out, and for various reasons I can't get back in now. But you can build a query in there, and you can have New Relic Nerd Graph report. You can send a request to it, and it will return a JSON object. And there's an array in there and things, and you should be able to get a URL out of that.
And you could use K6 to do that too.
You could. We do that in the helper script. That's actually a good example and a good reminder now that we can put the New Relic helper script.
Yeah,
Gotta
because
find it first.
the problem is with Selenium. I mean, you're actually simulating a full browser. If it's a JSON response, you don't really need to do that. Okay,
Yeah.
what's this?
So I put a helper script link. This was Simme definitely cleaned it up a lot. I'm very much novice when it comes to JavaScript.
Me too. It's okay.
Yeah. But it's such an awesome language, actually. I'm loving it more and more, and I'm building things in Node now by default. But yeah, that helper script has got a payload in there, which is going to our GraphQL API, which we call Nerd Graph. So yeah, you can look at how it's structured in there, and we're doing this with the alerts. So so that's already an example of integrated with a K6 test. And an enhancement request, which I might add to my own backlog here, it would be really cool if we can have a link to the dashboard after we've run a K6 test in the teardown.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be too hard to get working. So we'll add that to the short-term to-do list, I guess, Gary, and try to figure that out together. But this script that Gary posted now, or the gist, it's really a great start if you want to try out using K6 with New Relic. It has some really nice features, like first checking whether your system is actually healthy before executing or applying any load to it, because that could be an issue otherwise if you were to just start a test and your server or your system is already struggling, then you might make things worse rather than actually helping. So it integrates really nicely, and I think I don't know. You wrote an article about the webinar we had on that, right? But I don't think the actual recording is available anywhere at this point.
Is that for the Twitch stream that we had?
For the webinar.
It
For the webinar.
is.
Yes.
Yeah, I can get that link.
Awesome.
Because that really shows in practice a little bit more in detail exactly how that could work and why there are benefits to it. Because while the Nerd Byte is great, it's quite short and compact, right? So if you want to go into if you want to go in depth into the topic, you should definitely watch the recording from that webinar, because then you'll get the full scope.
Mm-hmm.
I'll post it here for you too, Simme.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, that's uploaded, and yeah, that's it's a good shout, because I think the example that we gave then, and one that I spoke about on our Twitch stream last week, was the example of testing in production. And the same customer that initially came to me about K6, they test in production, and they do some quite smart things to stop their K6 test if they're hitting the upper limits or if they have any ongoing incident in New Relic. So this will just completely stop the test altogether. And in the helper scripts that we linked as well, you're putting your email address in there. And you're holding yourself accountable. So anyone who's an operator and might not be aware of the K6 load test happening, they can click in here and they can see that, hey, actually there's a K6 load test happening. You can pass in any metadata, and you can pass in your email address or someone else's email address that you want to get the blame for breaking production, which yeah, my colleague on the Twitch was joking that nobody should change the helper script. They should leave it with my New Relic email address in there.
Oh no, that might have been a mistake.
Yeah, I think so. Jay, I see that didn't help. If you join the Slack that we put a link to earlier, the New Relic users sign up, and if you at G Spencer in there, or just DM me, actually is probably better. I'll check into that a bit more.
I'll post the link again.
Cheers.
And that's
so maybe
actually interesting that you mentioned, Gary, regarding having these fail-safes or these circuit breakers or whatever you want to call them built into your load tests as well. Because a lot of companies are moving more towards testing right while testing left. So they want to test early and they want to test in production. And in that case, you really can't afford having too much turbulence in your systems. So while this script or this helper will notify everyone using New Relic that we're running our load test, so this is not a real incident, and it will check beforehand to make sure that there are no ongoing sharp incidents before we run the load test. Do you have any suggestions on what would be the next step, so to speak, to if you want to evolve this even further? Except for adding a link to the dashboard, what would you recommend that a typical company using both products would do as their next step to up their performance testing?
Yeah, I think get onto the helper scripts. Make sure that your service in New Relic is targeted with a good set of health rules, right? And then you're evaluating that logic, and then you're making a call when the load test is happening. Okay, do we back out of the testing right now? Do we let it continue? What's happened has happened, or what will happen will be interesting. Maybe is the case. Yeah, I think that making sure that you have a good hold on the maximum throughput that you can have while having a good user experience is going to be key to that, because you have on the one hand that if you have a dedicated test environment, that you're not going to impact prod, right? But then you also have the fact that having a test setup is expensive in many cases, and they never match production. I've worked with many customers, and I won't name them, but there's always having this parity between the two environments. There's always some edge case where maybe there's a certain rule that is not there. Maybe you're having some caching happening, right? And because you're running your load test from one location, you're actually hitting the same cache. But then if you have some users coming in from a region which is not well cached, actually they're having a much slower user experience. So making sure that you're spreading your tests in that way, but also making sure that you know the limits for when you need to back out of a test. And if that's something you're going to do. So, starting smaller, but then saying, okay, what is our plan for if or maybe when this goes bad, because things do, right? So I think that's a way of becoming a bit more, mature about this. Our helper scripts might need a bit more tidying up and, pull requests accepted and all of that. So yeah, anything you can contribute back will be brilliant there. Yeah, just you can be pretty smart. You can have like a dashboard built in New Relic for ongoing during the load test. So everyone's looking at the K6 metrics that are coming in. You're looking at this, the state of the health in New Relic alongside, and And if you are deciding that you don't care if users are impacted in this time, because maybe it's at like 2 a.m. in the morning or something, then you can set up a muting rule in New Relic. Although that seems like a bit of a get out of jail free card, doesn't it, actually?
I think one of the things that I really like about observability tools or platforms like New Relic is that it opens up testing in production in general. Because as a load tester, there's always that fear of load testing, of putting on too much load in production, because you don't get that immediate feedback, and you want to try to load to have enough load on there so that it's useful data, useful information, but you don't want to go overboard and accidentally take servers completely down. But if you have a lot of metrics already being captured and sent to New Relic, then I feel a lot better that I can watch it every step of the way and increment users more slowly. And I feel like I would be able to stop it before it gets to the breaking point.
Yeah, I think having these quality gates is a really key part of this.
Okay, we have more questions. Stand out. How do you simulate? Oh, I just got the joke of the name. Is that what it is? Or sorry if it's not a joke, but I just thought it was a clever name. Anyway, like stand out. How do you simulate enterprise levels of messy data in test? And how do you keep costs down for soak and stress testing large distributed systems? Yeah, test data is always a problem, and it's especially a problem if you're dealing with sensitive data. The approach that I like and I try to use, if it's at all possible, is to generate data within the test, because you sometimes it's not possible, right? But if it is, it's a lot easier to use your load tests to, for instance, test the sign up process as well as business processes after the login, because that's something you want to load test anyway. So it makes sense to keep that data, generate random data, so that you're not using like production data that might potentially be sensitive. One of the problems with having large sets of data before the test is that it also adds a bit of a performance overhead. So you would have to, if you're running, for instance, 100 load generators, that really large data file might have to be sent to several places. We actually, in our last release, we actually kind of announced a new thing called shared array that should go a long way towards fixing that. So instead of that same file being copied in different places in real time, we actually take the part of the data that a virtual user needs and we send it to the virtual user, so that it's a lot more efficient. There's not a lot of duplicate data. How do you keep costs down for soak and stress testing large distributed systems? Baseline for starters, because load testing tools aren't all the same. They have different resource requirements. Some tools you can only run 5 users on one machine of a given spec, but other tools you can run 10,000. So first, before you even think of running a full-scale load test, run on one load generator with the script and the business processes that you've decided on, the transactions that you've decided to test, and then see how many users you can get. And I think it's only by coming up with that baseline that you can adequately and appropriately scale out, because maybe you don't need 100 load generators, maybe you only need 2. And it seems like an exaggeration, but that's actually really possible depending on the tool that you're using.
Yeah, and another thing, when you're doing soak and stress testing and really want to, up the traffic as much as possible, then it also makes sense to exclude maybe services that are not critical to the result of the test. For instance, you might not want to do all the requests towards your CDN, because you probably have an agreement with them that stipulates what the uptime should be and how much traffic it should be able to handle. So instead of just giving them money for nothing, basically, you could just skip those requests and focus on the ones that you can actually affect in terms of performance.
And also, while I think end-to-end tests are important and definitely have their place, don't feel like a load test has to be end-to-end, because maybe I think a lot of the cost associated with a large load test is environment or infrastructure costs. But you don't need the entire system available for you to test one component. So this is kind of in keeping with chaos engineering's principles of keeping the blast radius small, right? You start out small first, because if you already spot problems in that component, then there's really no point in adding more complexity to your load tests, because you already know that there's a problem.
Yeah, and that's a really, really, really good point. I think we can't stress that enough, that minimizing the blast radius is probably going to be the best cost saver you have, and not going for the full end-to-end flow right from the get-go, because it makes no sense. or most of the time it makes no sense, at least, because it's just too many variables that can affect the output of the test. So by starting small and iterating, you'll probably have a better experience and come further with a lot more value than if you just go for the end goal right away.
And with something like New Relic in your stack of tools, I think sometimes maybe load testing might not even be something you need, depending on what you're trying depending on what you're trying to look for. Sorry. I think that you could even make a case that if you an easy way to get an idea for the performance of your application is to look at historical metrics. So it's not, you don't always have to generate the load yourself, because production is a production like environment, and it happens to be, if you've been using New Relic, it happens to be a wealth of information that you can look through. So you might not even have to run a test at all, depending on what you're trying to find out. I know maybe that's a little weird coming from K6, but I don't think that a load test is always necessary. So we got some nice stuff from Jai Singh as well, who he says that he posted his first query yesterday on K6 Slack, and Gary replied to your query so quick.
Yeah, I thought I recognized the name. Yeah, I've been trying to help out on the K6 Slack whenever I see New Relic stuff coming in. I feel like I own it. I've bought it to your doorstep, and I feel like I don't want to cause you extra hassle.
No, we're glad. We're really lucky to have you so active on our Slack and our forum. And Señor Performo says, "Hola, hola, ¿qué tal?" Not all performance tests are load tests. Yes, this is like this is Senor Performo's like favorite rant, I think. Absolutely. I think New Relic is actually doing a lot in this area too, because when people say performance tests, they think load tests right away. But there's so much information that you can get without doing a load test, and there's so many other aspects of performance that load testing doesn't actually provide you. I know that there's actually the New Relic RUM is a pretty awesome tool. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that, Gary?
Yeah, so we have a real user monitoring based product. So New Relic browser. This sits on your browser, and it ties the requests into the downstream, into the server side and into the logs and the infra along the way as well. we also have synthetics, which is giving you like that good snapshot view. It's not something you would use for a load test at all, but it's going to give you that baseline. So what this is doing, it's cutting out the noise of the what we call the edge machines. So an edge machine, in my case, it will be my laptop here, which is running tens of things and Docker, and it's on my home broadband, which is not brilliant. It should be for what I pay them, but it's not. So it's not. It's not a clean test, it's not repeatable. But then when you have like, and this goes the same for other observability vendors, it's not unique to New Relic, but New Relic's ones, they run in AWS and or other cloud providers as well. But yeah, AWS might have been Azure as well. So that's a very clean view because you have a network which is most of the time, pretty much all the time, stable, very low latency links there as well, and especially if you're in the same region as those tests. So that's a very good baseline. You can install New Relic. We call it containerized private minions. Just like the film.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah, I actually thought it was a joke when I joined, and they have this. But we have loads of things that are named things that you wouldn't think a company like New Relic will name things. So I love it. But
so
yeah,
what
anyway,
do they do, these minions?
Yeah, so you install them like on anywhere that you can run Docker. So I can install it on my laptop here, just like how we're running the New Relic statsd integration. You just give it a command, you give it your license key, and then what you're doing when you're scheduling these synthetic tests, you can pick the location of that minion to run in your own corporate network, perhaps. But again, you could install that maybe in like the same way that you're running your K6 load test. If you're running that from within your network or something. But yeah, the New Relic one, it's a very moment in time kind of snapshot, the synthetics. You could pick all of the tens of synthetic locations and you could have it run every minute, but it's not the same as a load test, is it really? The load test is very much for that stress related, suddenly all of this traffic at once. For us, it's a good snapshot from around the world, and you could use it as a baseline to compare the noise versus a real user versus a robot user in a load test, which is quite a good triangle of data points there.
Yeah, because that's definitely something that load tests don't do. In load testing, we don't really care about the experience of the single user, but you should care as gatekeepers of quality in general, whatever your role might be. You should care about other metrics that measure performance outside of just response time. So things like how quickly does something render on the page, or even accessibility or UX. Those things are important parts of the whole experience that might completely ruin it for somebody if you're not paying attention to it.
Definitely. One of the things that I did in the Medium article, and I think I put it in the results visualization guide on the K6 docs, we have a screenshot in there, which is of New Relic distributed tracing. Other tracing providers are available, I suppose. And we take the user agent string in there. And so K6, for instance, it has the K6 in the user agent string. JMeter, they also put their user agent string. You can set it to whatever you want as well, right? You can chart that separately. So you can, select average duration in New Relic of, say, all of your requests on one service, and you could facet it by the user agent string. Or you could say where the user agent string is equal to or is like K6, and you can get a very good kind of separation between how these load tests are running. So I could separate my real users, and that's what I do in the results viz guide. We have that view of we have selecting where the header is like K6 and where the header is not like K6. So we can compare the K6 load experience versus the real users who might be buying, I don't know, bread on my website.
That's so good too, because then you're able to see how close you got, basically. how close your simulated user got to the real user experience.
I remember reading somewhere about some company where the engineering team of one of the products apparently had to they had to fulfill some kind of performance requirement, and they used K6 to test it. So since there is a specific user agent for K6, they just decided to check for that user agent, and in case it was K6, just return 200 as soon as possible and not do any of the server logic altogether, just skipping that. Or
I
like,
love
yeah, we made it,
Well,
right?
that's one way
We
to
have
do it.
stellar performance now.
That is superb.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that was a really good chat. It was an hour already. It seemed to go really quickly. Thank you so much for coming on. We would love to have you back again, actually, if
You're so welcome.
willing.
I would love to. Yeah, hopefully I can bring some friends along. Yeah.
Yes,
And
that would be great.
yeah, I think we would like to see you attend a few of ours, our new Twitch streams and all of this. And we're learning
Awesome.
this live streaming together. I love that. Like,
Yeah.
we were already working on integrations, and now we're learning on live streams together how we can improve.
Well, I think you and the new Relicants have got it nailed, honestly. But yeah, sure, we'll learn with you.
Or from
but
you, I
thanks for
don't
having
know.
Yeah. As
But
Dan
no.
Dad says, really useful, learned a lot, excited to use both tools. Thanks all. Thank
Would you
you,
like
Stan.
to
And yeah, sorry.
sorry, before we end, would you like to do any last minute plugs for anything that you will be doing in the near future, or anywhere people might catch you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at GSPNCR. I don't even know how to pronounce that, and it's my own handle. Yeah, so I'll be. I like to tweet things that's cool in New Relic. But yeah, we have the Lookout coming, and the New Relic Explorer launch very soon. We're super excited about that. There's a cool little video in the link in the chat down below. That's the only plug I'm going to have for today. I could have given out my PayPal address or something, but yeah. But thanks for having me. It's been awesome. I've loved it.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Thanks for coming.
And thanks everyone for asking your questions and staying with us till the end. Till next time.